Live streaming on. So we're reopening Governance Committee. Apologies for the adjournment, but we had a very long planning committee to get through, and then we had a bite to eat to keep going. We've got full attendance here from our committee members today. And so I'll just go and ask if there's confirmation of minutes. Anyone? Councillor Fowler and seconder. Councillor O'Neill, all in favour? Thank you. Any conflicts of interests? No. Starred items, is there anything anyone wishes to unstar? No. I'm quite happy to star 6.2 and 7.1. No. No. It's a different 7.1 I think you've got. Oh, that one. Right. No, I've got a different number now. Okay, we'll leave it as is. So I'll move that the starred items be moved for seconded Councillor Taylor. All in favour? Okay. So we'll now go to 6.2. Does anybody want a presentation or just go to questions?
Make the day longer, but I just think given the content, if there was a short presentation, okay. I was interested in that.
Great, let's do it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Councillors. Back in September of 2022, we started a strategic review of our policy framework at the City. We had 134 policies that we commenced with. 50 of those policies were classed as organisational policies and 84 were classed as council policies. This review that's in front of us today, the fraud and corruption policy, was reviewed as an organisational policy. It's where it started. It was last reviewed by the City back in 2012, so it's been a good 12 years since this policy has had any substantial or material look and review. When we undertook to review this policy as an organisational policy, its scope was was internally focused, and one of the key changes in relation to the policy is ensuring that the scope now addresses a much more broader audience, and that applies to councillors and employees, our suppliers, and to members of the community. And that went, yeah, thank you. Is that better? No? Better? Yep. And it's for that reason that the policy... I can swap?
We'll swap.
All right.
If you want to stand up at the podium, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And it's for that reason that the policy is actually coming back to council. Is that still not working? No. I think I'm trying to be silenced. It's good?
Check, check.
It's for that reason that the policy is actually put before the committee today and presented back to council and rebranded as a council-owned policy set by our strategic policy makers. Some of the key things that we looked at with regards to this policy, we did some benchmarking, looking at both local, state and federal government policies in relation to fraud. We also undertook a significant review of the policy against the revised ASO Australian standards, the AS 8001, which was reviewed in 2021. The most significant parts of that review of the standard relate to a renewed focus for us to ensure that our fraud and corruption control initiatives focus on prevention, detection, reporting, monitoring and evaluation, and we've made sure that both the policy and the fraud and corruption control system address each of those 4 stages of management of fraud and corruption. That's the key changes, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Gates. So is none of the sound working? It is sound working? Okay.
I just have a question. Usually when we get a policy review, we get the old one with the changes so that we can actually see what's changed and improved. And it's just a comment that for me, I don't know how to look at the improvements when I don't know what's changed. So has there been a conscious decision not to include the old policy?
The old policy is attached to the agenda report, but we are substantially or materially changing the way that we construct policies at the city. So we are very much intentionally splitting policies and procedures, which is how they were presented previously. But it should be provided as attachment 3, I believe, to the report that's in front of you today.
Did everyone get the old policy? No, sorry, I didn't see it.
It's not the red stripe. No, it's not. It looks like this.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But it doesn't have the red stripes.
Okay. So it's the track changes that I was actually referring to that we used to get so that you would know what changes had been made. So my question is there a reason why we're not showing the track changes?
I'm happy then.
Through you, Chair. No, I don't believe there is. I'll refer to Vanessa as to how we did this differently to what we've presented previously.
Yeah.
I think given we're going to be having a few of these coming through, if we could do it with a track changes, it just makes it a lot easier. Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. Mine was similar to Councillor Gates. So, I was really finding it difficult to find the differences between the two policy, being that the new policy is so condensed and the old policy is so comprehensive. I think being a new councillor particularly, it was like, well, what's removed? So that was, just a comment on that as well. So I agree with what Councillor Patterson said. If we can have the track changes in future, would be very, very useful.
Yep.
You wanted to...
Through you, Chair, more than happy to provide those comments prior to the council meeting, if that's okay.
But I guess what I wanted to discuss in relation to this was just what is the actual difference between the administration policy that the CEO and the city approved compared to this fraud policy that's council approved. So, just how do those two, I guess, work together? And then why is one administration and one is full council?
Sure. Absolutely, through the Chair. Organisational policy relates to the administration of the city. So obviously with the CEO, so it very much relates to the staff and the operations of the business. Council policy is about setting the rules for us as an organisation, outwardly focused, and also for the community. So because this particularly relates to not just employees and councillors, but it also impacts on suppliers and anyone that does business with us in any way, it also provides guidance for members of the community if they have any reasonable suspicion of fraud and corruption. It provides the avenue or direction for them to actually report that, and demonstrates our city's support for them to do so, and either through reporting it directly through to council or in accordance with the policy, the confidential avenue to do that is also as a public interest disclosure.
Just one follow on. So this is the first time that we've added to the fraud policy external contractors and suppliers. Is that correct? Or has that always been part of the existing policy?
Can I just grab my... I can tell you in terms of... So there's a substantial change or a material change in the scope of the previous policy to the scope of the current policy. Previously, it was very focused on applying to temporary, casual and permanent employees, labour hire, agency resources and volunteers. Didn't actually incorporate councillors, suppliers and other members of the community.
Okay,
so that's a material change.
That's one of the material changes, is that now councillors, contractors, council business suppliers, this all now applies to. So with that material change, how does that get communicated to those groups, and how is it enforced? Is it in their contract agreements, or what does that look like?
Yep. So it'll be made publicly available on our website for everyone to view in our policy register on the website. Our contracting terms and conditions, and unhappily if Susan wants to add anything to this, is they require our contractors to abide by all of our policies and procedures of the organisation, and that generally is a standard term and condition of our contracts. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on this whole review. Was that instigated from an incident, or was this already planned to be reviewed?
Yeah, it was actually throughout 2023, we conducted about 45 workshops internally to review all of our policies. We grouped our like policies together. This was actually our 5th workshop. So it's from that point in time, it's potentially long overdue to have come back to you. And then we had obviously some caretaker period and council elections to deal with. So it is just literally a part of that scheduled review. We've completed around about 30 in total, and there's around about 50 policies related to council that will come back to you in the next couple of months. So we're working through those as quickly as we can to bring those drafts back for consideration.
Okay, thank you. And follow on from that, so the recent incident we had, and I don't want to go into detail because I know that's ongoing, were any further changes made through this review of the incident around fraud that we had, or was that assessed against this new control and you know, it stacks up well, essentially?
I'm not actually across the incident.
Through you, Chair, no. It didn't impact the influence of this policy.
Okay. Okay. And last question, Chair, just wondered if this policy, does that flow through to our controlled entities, or is it just the internal?
Through you, Chair, it's just internal.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. A couple of questions. Did we take any learnings, or has there been any learnings from any internal reviews of any incidents recently that has impacted this policy? And the second question is in relation to external, we'll say suppliers, how will they be notified of the changes? I know they're saying they've got to abide by it, but how will they be notified of these particular changes or any policy changes?
Through the Chair. I'm sorry, can you, could I ask you to ask the first part of the question?
I think the first one was just answered, unless there was something more specific that you needed.
I just think, was there any takings from previous?
No.
There's nothing.
No.
That was totally... Okay.
Through the Chair, however, we did actually review all previous audit findings that would be normal practice audits, and also risk assessments that were already on our books. So we did factor that into the review, along with the benchmarking and the Australian standards. Yeah, sorry. And no, that's okay. I was just going to say, through the Chair, in terms of communication, look, I'm happy to take that on notice. Other than generally publishing on our website is the most common way, but I'm happy to consider and report back to you on some other options that we may have to communicate with our suppliers.
I can, through the Chair, just to cover that off, we do, if there is a requirement for compliance, we'll include that in the contract provisions.
And I'll just, before we go, if I'm not sure whether questions are going to extend this further, but if you did want to make inquiries about this in relation to an incident, then we could go into closed and ask questions in closed, but I'll just leave that. Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, so I'm more interested in current contracts. I know new contracts going and would talk about current policies. I'm just interested in, this is one policy that they've got to comply to, and we're saying there's going to be a change. I'm just interested in any policy, how that is communicated, that not just on a website. Do we circulate changes to suppliers or any organisation?
I would, through the Chair, that would just be a matter of course. Any changes to policies that affect any of our external suppliers, we ensure that they're notified. Obviously, if there's an existing contract, the contract stays the same, but there will be notification. Generally, if it's a supplier undertaking activities that are very similar to an employee, they are required to comply with our policies already. There's already a general statement around compliance with policies.
Councillor Fowler?
Thank you, Chair. I also just had one question just in relation to the Fraud and Corruption Incident Register. Is that just a council administration facing document, or does council actually get access to that, and are we reported on that in this committee?
Through the Chair, the incident register is under development through our Integrity and Workplace Relations team. It's not. There has been a register in the past, but it is under review for improvement. I imagine an update on fraud and corruption will also be presented through to the Audit and Risk Committee and the ELT on a 6-monthly basis. So that is a part of the attachment, which is the Fraud and Corruption Control System.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Chair. Just furthering on to what Councillor Martin briefly touched on just before, and extending on that, in relation to our controlled entities, what does that look like for them as far as these types of policies goes? Is this something that they as a board will just adopt in their own due course, or because the way it was just put is that this is almost irrelevant to them? So can I just get some clarity on that?
Yeah, Pete?
Yeah, through you, Chair, yes, the board is responsible for the policies of the controlled entities. We certainly work closely since the establishment of EGC with any policy work that we are doing, and the teams are working to establish what is fundamentally for them some new policies with regards to EGC.
But I suppose with that, they are separate entities. So there'll be some alignment. They'll look at that, but they're a separate board of directors. They've got separate responsibilities to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Just going to add to that, but they do go through our audit and risk. Right, that occurred to me then that they still run through our audit and risk program.
Well, they will. And one thing that was raised yesterday in the Audit and Risk Committee is we're revising our policy so it's a little bit more prescriptive on what the Audit and Risk Committee looks at with regard to controlled entities. So that, I think, when's that coming back? That's next Audit and Risk Committee. Is that right?
Yeah, through the Chair, yes, they do have their own Audit and Risk Committee, EGC separate, and our ARC, or Audit and Risk Committee, will be focused on predominantly the administration, the city administration's control of the controlled entities and the processes around that.
It may be because I've just sat through 7 hours of planning and then 7 hours of audit and risk yesterday as well. But I'm aware that we've got a lot of these policies coming, and the easier that you can make it for us to digest it, identify what was there before, what's the context for changing. I know that there probably is all in there, but just if you can just think, okay, Brooke's now onto her 1,850th page of reading the last 2 days, which is literally what I am. Things, for example, just like the attachments, if you can just make sure that they're full-sized and not tightened down, that the track changes are on, and then the context, I think, for these policies somehow would be useful as well. Thank you. Okay, who would like any comments before we move? No? Councillor Martin, you'd like to move it? Councillor Wilkinson, second. All in favour? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so the next item is enclosed regarding the retention program update, and the reason for going into closed is that involves industrial matters affecting employees. So I move that we go into close, seconded by Councillor Martin. Do I need a seconder for a procedural motion like that? Yeah, okay. All in favour? Okay, we're going into close. Thank you. Great. Okay, so we have just considered closed item retention program update. Does anyone like to move that item? Councillor Martin, seconded Councillor Fowler. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Martin?
No, I'm happy to
No.
move
Okay.
on.
All in favour? Good. Done. Any general business? No? Okay, thank you. We close the meeting at 3:15.